Welcome back to the Boot Tragedies. Some interesting news coming out of New Orleans already. Like I said, the all season is going to be off to a fast start. Phil Yates is reporting that the Saints have basically pushed the void dates back of Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata, defensive end and defensive tackle, basically from February 17th to March 14th. So that's going to push it back basically a month. And he said this prolongs the window to negotiate an extension and avoid dead money accelerating onto the cap. It also prevents either one of those guys from being tagged. But let's be real, none of those guys were going to be franchise tagged or anything like that, just because that just wouldn't make any sense from the Saints' part. Then Nick Underhill basically followed up with that, basically talking about these guys' dead money. Davenport dead money will be $7.6 million if he leaves. Onyemata dead money will be $10.1 million if he leaves. So that's a lot of dead money to carry on the cap if any one of those guys were to leave. The Saints have been in cap situations where they have to put void years and things like that of that nature into contracts. So that dead money is going to pile up if any one of those guys were to walk out the door this offseason. A couple things here from the Saints. First and foremost, this is going to buy them some time. Instead of having to make this decision basically within the next month, you get 2 months. And now 2 months is very, very important because obviously the Super Bowl will be done by then. Everybody will be, in their off-season phase. You're going to basically know who's going to be free agents, what the draft boards are going to look like, and so much more things will be much clearer in March than it will be in early February. So that's just smart on the Saints. And it also gives them time to come up with a plan. Come up with a concept of, free agency in this offseason, what you want to do with guys, plan A's, plan B's, plan C's, and things like that. So just pushing it back basically a month will just give you more and more time to just develop a plan. If this guy leaves, if this guy comes back, if both come back, if both leave, you're going to have to be ready for everything. That's going to give the Saints more time to kind of decide and figure things out. Now on David Onyemata, I guess we can go over both of them. David Onyemata, he's been the most underrated player in the Saints uniform for the last 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, I think he had a very, very down year this year. Our run game was very, very awful this year. Let's be honest. That run game where we were holding people under 100 yards for the longest, it just was non-existent this year. Run game, the defensive tackles, Onyemata, Shad Tuttle, Street, Roach, they all had their moments, but in totality, the run game, the defensive tackle play was probably, I won't say the worst position on the team this year, but the most disappointing, in my opinion. It was the most disappointing positions on the field this season, and they just have to be better. The Saints have to make decisions on those guys, obviously, and David Onyemata is going to be a big one. When he originally re-signed with the Saints, his last contract, I believe it was three years, $26 million or something like that. But they added a bunch of void years. Is where this dead money comes in at. They added a void year for 2023, 24, 25, 26, just to get creative with the cap. But it also, had to spread that money out in the dead cap. Will be about $10.6 million, $10.7 million if he's not to re-sign with the Saints just because of all those void years. And he's going to be 31 soon. He's getting older. He's getting up there in age, not washed by any stretch of the imagination, but he is getting older. But he's still a very, very solid player for the Saints. Started all 17 games this season, had 5 sacks, was okay in the run game. I don't think he was great by any stretch of the imagination. Remember last season he was suspended for 6 games, I think for like PED uses or something like that. So only had 2 sacks last season. But the 2020 season, which was his best season, started 15 games, played in 15 games, had 6.5 sacks, had a really, really good season that year, had 10 tackles for loss, only 5 this past season. So his play has declined from the 2020 season. That was his peak. In my opinion, in the 2021 season, he was suspended. This year, he had a bounce back year of sorts. He was okay. He was just okay. I think if he comes back, the numbers, I have no idea how the numbers are going to work out, but it won't be at 3 years, basically almost $30 million. If he wants to come back on a 2-year deal, I say between 10 to 15 million, not a year. Just in totality, maybe $7 million a year. I think they can make that work. He's still a good player, but he's not going to be making $10 million a year for the Saints. I don't think he's just worth that at this point of his career. You can find a guy much cheaper and probably give you the same amount of stats and same amount of efficiency that David Onyemata is going to give you at 31 years old. So at the end of the day, I think he's just going to come down to numbers, how the numbers are going to work out with the void years and things like that. But he almost can't leave because that $10.7 million in dead cap is just going to be a big, big number if he was to leave. Now, Marcus Davenport, that's going to be the very, very interesting, very, very interesting call from the Saints because obviously you basically used 2 first-round picks to get this guy. So obviously you don't want to just lose him in free agency or just let him walk without getting anything in return. Now his career has been up and down. I mean, you can start anywhere. You can start with the injuries. He's been injured all throughout his career, nagging injuries, major injuries. Got, I think, his pinky halfway amputated and things like that. So he's been injured a lot of different injuries. Can't really stay on the field. When he's on the field, sometimes he's great. Sometimes you don't know he's playing. You just never know what you're going to get from Marcus Davenport. And it's just been a topsy-turvy, up and down career for him. And it's going to show. He's 26 years old, about to be 27, so he's technically in the prime of his career, but you just wouldn't know at some games. This year was absolutely awful for Marcus Davenport. Let's just be honest. He finished the season with a half a sack, 29 tackles, and 2 tackles for loss, 8 quarterback hits. Absolutely disgusting numbers from Marcus Davenport. Absolutely awful. He looks bigger. He looks slower. I watched Sam Darnold outrun him to the edge in that last game of the season. That's just not the Marcus Davenport I'm used to seeing. Not at all. This was a contract year. I thought he was going to show up and show out, but he did not do any of those things. He had his worst year as a pro, in my opinion. Numbers just lows across the board. Just lows across the board for Marcus Davenport. Absolutely disgusting to watch what I saw from him this year. But you have to take into consideration that 2021 season, which he was the best player on the defense for a consistent basis, not named Demario Davis, in my opinion, in 2021. He was really, really good in 2021. He started 9 games, played 11, finished the season with 9 sacks, had 9 tackles for loss compared to 2, had 16 quarterback hits compared to 8 this past season. So he had a much, much better season in 2021. But I'm not going to pay you in 2023 for the season you had in 2021. We're going to take into consideration all 5 years you've played and the numbers you've produced, the production you've produced over those 5 years, plus on top of what we think you're going to do in the next 2 to 3 seasons. And it's going to be a very, very tricky situation because, I mean, as a former first-round pick, a guy that has 21 career sacks in 5 years, not the greatest, but it's not awful by any means. In that 2021 season, maybe a team's going to jump out the window and try to offer him, some crazy contract or, some one-year deal that's very, very high. Who knows what's going to happen on that front. But at the end of the day, man, that's going to be a tough, tough decision. $7 million cap hit is with Marcus Davenport. It's going to, carry if he leaves the Saints. So it's going to be a very, very tricky situation, and especially because you spent 2 first-round picks on him. So obviously you're going to want to keep that guy in-house, but he just can't make the money that he's probably going to want. And if you go to Spotrac, who, basically runs the NFL salary cap things on the internet and things like that, they have all of the salary cap breakdowns, player contract breakdowns. They compared Marcus Davenport to guys that were at his age with kind of his production and things like that in the contracts they've gotten. I'm going to leave this first guy name out of this list because Myles Garrett and Marcus Davenport does not belong in the same sentence on any day of the week. But the other 3 guys they have is DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and Frank Clark. Now these guys all got DeMarcus Lawrence, got 5 years, $105 million. He was 26 years old when he signed that. Leonard Williams, 3 years, $63 million, 26 years old when he signed that. And Frank Clark, 5 years, $104 million, 25 years old when he signed that. Now the value on Marcus Davenport, according to Spotrac, is around 5 years, $108 million. Now let me let you know one thing. Marcus Davenport is not getting anywhere close to 5 years and $108 million from the Saints. If someone wants to offer him that much money, guess what? Have him, adios, and goodbye. No way in hell he's going to get anything. He's not even going to get half of that. Let's be honest. He's not going to get anything remotely close to that. He just hasn't had the production to earn that much money. If you just compare him to Carl Granderson, who had a pretty good season, in my opinion, he finished the season with 5.5 sacks, only started 4 games, had 9 tackles for loss, 9 quarterback hits, was just better than Marcus Davenport in every last category you can possibly imagine for a defensive end. And guess what? Next year, he's only scheduled to make $3.7 million, a $4 million cap hit, where Marcus Davenport's probably going to be looking for $10 to $15 million, maybe even more, up to $20 million a year. If that's the case, guess what? Give me Carl Granderson as a starting defensive end for the New Orleans Saints over Marcus Davenport any day of the week. Any day of the week, if that's the type of money he's gonna want and obtain, then it's just a no-brainer for the Saints. That $7.1 million cap hit is just gonna have to hit because he cannot come back for any type of money remotely close to what he probably thinks he's worth, and he's just not worth it in my opinion. So let me know what y'all think in the comments below. And David Onyemata, Marcus Davenport in their future with the Saints, and as always, this DaBoot Tragedies, and I'm out.